So very good morning to everybody. Thank you, Suhail, for those warm words of welcome. Certainly, I think yesterday when we were thinking about, whether today the weather will permit us to be able to hold this event, there were a lot of concerns and we were worried, but luckily the rain gods have spared us. We've managed to get the cyclone to shift its direction slightly so that it avoided the ITC Grand Chola, and here we are all here in the morning. So once again, thank you all for taking the effort and coming down here for this event. This is our first physical event that we are holding after February 2020. And which better place to do this first physical event than Chennai? Chennai has a special place in the retail world of India. If you do remember, in most places, the start of organized retail starts in some location. And similarly, even if you look at organized retail, amongst the oldest companies, which was Spencer's, started out here in Chennai. Of course, inherited from the British and then continued under Indian ownership. If you look at some of the sari stores which are here, whether you're looking at Pothys, Naidu Hall, all of them are here today, but they're all companies and businesses which have started 60, 70, 80 years back. And if you trace back even those businesses, you will discover that there is a generation before that which was involved in the business. And no other city in this country can actually boast of having retail which goes back so far. That's one thing about Chennai. So Chennai has a strong connection and a strong heritage of retail. Today we might call it modern retail, we might call it online, e-commerce, etc. But the fact that people buying things, selling to customers in a store, that concept of retail is something that started in Chennai. The second is that even if you look at Chennai, and I find two states which are quite similar in this respect. One is Kerala and the other is Tamil Nadu. You will find that the local retailers are the strongest players in those markets. You don't find national retailers in any sense of strength in these two states, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And there is something about it. You will, if you look at the largest jewelry store in Kerala, for example, or in Tamil Nadu, for example, it is not a national chain. It is somebody who started from here. Maybe today they've expanded into a few more states. And I think the trick in all of this is the fact that you know who your customer is. You understand who your customer and what he or she requires. You also are able to create the change which encourages customers to start coming back again to your stores. And I think the most important part about this is the fact that there is a relationship between the customer, the store, the owners. And that is a relationship which stays for a very long while. So you might have one generation, you have a second generation, you have a third generation, but then the relationship between the customer and the store brand continues to remain. And I think that is also something that I've seen out here. I do remember, I can see people from Vivek's here, so I do remember, Vivek's for the January 1st sale used to have queues which used to wind all the way around the entire block. That was the anticipation that customers used to have for the sales that used to be in Vivek. And similar to that, there were several concepts which were actually pioneered in Chennai. So I think all of you all here must be very, very proud of the fact that you've contributed a lot to what Indian retail is all about. And you've actually pioneered many concepts, which today many large companies have taken it and made it their concept, so they have adapted it for their own use. But the fact is that all of you all are the ones who've been part of that entire movement. So what I'd like to do is actually just focus on two slides. One is this, and there's a second which comes after this. There is a 2019 which we all are very familiar with. We always exchange sales information also with you, saying that this is how we compare with 2019. There was last year, which is 2020, which all of us are familiar with. We've also got this year, which also we are all very familiar with, very uncertain time. And during this uncertain time, people are not sure whether you want to shop, whether you want to go out of the house, whether you will fall ill if you go out of the house, whether you will contract the virus. All of these concerns are uppermost in people's minds. So everybody is what you call as sheltered. And when you say sheltered, what it means is that you are staying inside the house. You're only spending money on things that you can spend and which are essential. So clothing changes in terms of the kind of things you buy. Food changes in terms of the kind of things you buy. Entertainment changes in terms of what you can actually sample as entertainment. So lots of changes have happened in our lives in the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021. And then I don't want to say that it is a post-pandemic time, because I'm not a medical expert to say that the pandemic is behind us. But if you look at 2022, which is also the theme of the conference, what we know is certainly businesses and lives would be led very differently than what we were leading lives and businesses in 2019. Kumar and I were talking about in the morning about how we think about distributed organizations. Nobody ever thought that you could actually work from your house. But yet, on the other hand, in the last 18 months, we have discovered how people have begun to be, so comfortably work from home. And because of which, if you go to any large IT company today, the biggest challenge that they have is in getting people to come back to the office. So while they are saying that, we are safe, offices are open, we would like people to come back to offices, etc., the employees who have tasted the benefits of working from their homes and tasted the fact that this can actually lead to higher levels of disposable income, all of them are actually quite comfortable working from home rather than coming back to an office. So there are several things that have happened that people today are questioning what was never questioned till 2019. Is there a way to study? Is there a way to work? Is there a way to sample entertainment? Is there a way to live? All of these kind of things. So that's one thing that we should remember. And all those changes in consumers' lives will certainly create an impact in our own lives. And when I say lives, all of us as retailers have a life which is a professional life in the store, and that life is something that we will certainly see changes in. How will it change? What are the things that are likely to change in this? All of that will only be a matter of time. But I've just tried to put together some thoughts in terms of how the customer is changing and have we changed along with the customer. So the first is, as I mentioned to you earlier, is about how our customers' lives have changed. Leisure. If you looked at, let's say, regular cable television, I think we have today about 220 million people who are accessing regular cable television out of about 250 million households in this country. Before the pandemic, streaming channels, which are things like Netflix, Hotstar, those kind of channels, used to be typically about 70 to 80 million out of this 250 million households. Today, streaming channels, in the course of the last 18 months, have actually increased all the way to 180 million households. So what you're seeing here is that the way people are sampling entertainment has changed dramatically. No longer are people saying that I need to go to a cinema and watch a movie. I can actually sit at home and watch a movie. And if I can sit at home and watch a movie, then a lot of the film producers are saying, why should I then make sure that the streaming channel is not simultaneously broadcasting when I'm releasing the movie in a theater? So what used to be earlier 8 weeks before you actually release it on streaming channel have now actually started becoming lesser and lesser, and to the extent that in some of the cases there are producers who are releasing simultaneously. The other which is there in terms of the kind of things that we are doing. From a leisure perspective, those of us who actually are involved in the mall business are beginning to see that people are coming back now to the malls. What we are also seeing is that the conversion ratios in malls have actually improved. What we are also seeing that the average bill value is increasing. So while you might have 100% of your previous sales, it's coming because of lesser customers coming in who are buying more on the average, and who are actually more of them are actually buying on the average. So conversion and average bill values are also going up. We're also seeing that from a work perspective, as I just described earlier, a lot of people are very comfortable working from home, to the extent that many companies are now saying that this will be an integral part of the working style. We will not want everybody to come to the office every week or every day. We'd like them to come maybe once or twice in a particular week. We're talking about the gig workers and the fact that you can have somebody working for you but not working in your office, not a full-time employee, but will be a contract employee of yours. So that's the other thing that we are seeing. Children who have sampled studying from home and have understood that it is so easy to be able to roll out of bed and get in front of a computer at 8 o'clock in the morning without even changing their clothes, without even having brushed their teeth, and then, finishing and stepping off when they feel like and eating what they want, and then coming back again to the class, being actually able to play games while listening to their maths teacher. All of that is a luxury that children have experienced. And having experienced that luxury, what we are seeing, children are also reluctant to go back to school. They think, can't we find something which is a mix of both what we've done in the past and what we are expected to do in the future? So that's the other thing that we are seeing. Social interactions. We are seeing social interactions actually, people are being careful about who they see, who they meet, how frequently do they meet, where do they meet people, what's the distance that they maintain. So all the social distancing norms that have been, kind of defined has also led to a change in the way social interactions have been created. Communication. Zoom was always existing. Microsoft Teams always used to exist. But then on the other hand, suddenly they saw a new surge of life after the pandemic and the shutdown had started. So there are ways now today that people are saying, like I'm, doing a part of an advisory board for the CIITC Sustainability Institute, and we're doing a board call at 11 o'clock virtually. Everybody's across the country and doing a board call virtually, which would never have been imagined before the pandemic, where everybody would have been insisted, please come to the common meeting ground. So these are things that have happened in which we are now very comfortable with. We all suddenly saw a new concern for health. The fact that people want to work out, to make sure that they're exercising, they're eating the right kind of food, all of that stuff. All this finally has also led to, a higher disposable income. And when people sit at home and when they have additional disposable income because their expenditure has reduced, then there are newer investment opportunities which are there. So if you look at the IPO markets today, and if you look at the subscription from the public side, and what you can see is that, somebody's getting 82 times subscribed, somebody's getting 300 times subscribed. Even in the companies that you see, if you look at the roster of shareholders, in one of the companies whose boards I'm on, what we have seen is that the number of shareholders has actually trebled. It has gone from 62,000 shareholders to 198,000 shareholders in the course of the last 18 months. And it is not that, this large number is all retail shareholders. If you speak to those who are in the depository side of the business, they'll all tell you that the number of depository accounts which have been opened up in the last 18 months have been tremendous. So all this means what? It means that there is higher disposable income, there are newer savings and investment opportunities that customers are seeing, and that will certainly make a difference. So if you've become a new shareholder, if you've never ever bought shares in the past, but if you're buying shares, if you buy one, then you'll feel that maybe I should buy a second, maybe I should buy a third. And all of that is being demonstrated in the strength of the Indian equity market and the responses that we are getting for the IPOs which are there. So our customers' lives have changed. And I think that's what we need to remember most importantly. If the customers' lives have changed, then we should understand we have to keep and adapt to the changing customer rather than expect the customer to continue to adapt to what we have been in the past. So this means that the way we shop will see dramatic changes. What we saw certainly in the beginning when the pandemic hit, we found customers comfortable walking very close to their homes and buying from the local grocery store, or they wanted to buy online. They were afraid to travel distances. They didn't want to go 3-4 kilometers to go to a large store. They're very happy buying from the local store. And if you look at several markets across the world, what you are seeing is you're beginning to see the resurgence of the neighborhood store. So that is one thing that we need to keep in mind. So you're seeing resurgence in online and you're seeing resurgence in the neighborhood store, which means that those which are there in between will need to figure out how to be able to reinvent themselves. Role of the local store, as I was mentioning earlier, is now becoming a lot more critical. So what you are seeing is that, the likes of 7-Eleven, which has just been signed on by Reliance, the likes of the local store. And when you have the local store, and the local store says that I don't want to be left behind, they are the first set of stores which are willing to adapt digital technologies. So while they know that they've never ever got near digital technology in the past, but they know the role that it will play, and when they see the competition from people like, say, a Big Basket or a JioMart, as a local grocery store, I say, why should I be any different from them? I can offer the same in terms of technology. So the role of the local store will change. The role of technology in enabling our lives and driving change. And I think this is something that we should all remember. All of us today are a lot more technology savvy than what we were 18 months back. We might have struggled in the months of March and April last year trying to figure out, how do I connect on a Zoom call? How do I connect on Microsoft Teams? How do I create virtual backgrounds? How do I actually schedule a meeting and things like that? But over a period of time, and it didn't take very long for all of us, over a period of time, we got comfortable. We learnt it. And then after that, it became an integral part of our lives. So what we have seen is that while we might have never thought that technology will play such an important role, but in this current context, we've seen technology really play a dramatic role in our own lives. And it is not that we are uncomfortable. The older people have got comfortable. And if you look at a lot of the older people who otherwise would see their children coming and visiting them, maybe once, twice, thrice in a month, children couldn't come. Sometimes, children are in another city. They come certainly once in 3 to 6 months. Those children couldn't visit. A lot of them figured out how to be able to use one mobile phone and to be able to download Zoom onto it and continue to maintain a relationship with their children, continue to maintain the communication. And it is almost like they felt that their children were with them, though their children were in another city or in another country. So even they have actually learned how to be able to use technology. The youngsters, on the other hand, if you look at all the school children, they took to technology, like a duck to water. They actually managed to figure out how to be able to get into a virtual classroom, how to be able to submit an assignment online, how to make sure that I actually managed to do cut pasting without anybody noticing it, how to be able to make sure that I did other things, during the course of a class day with the teachers not noticing it. All of these things, they figured out even before the teachers figured these things out. So I think, while the youngsters took very quickly to technology, the older people also took to technology, and everybody today understands that that technology is today playing a much more important role in our lives than what it has been in the past. The interest of the private financial markets, and this is an aspect that I wanted to just dwell on. What we have seen is that the fact that retail today has an important role to play in the lives of consumers, the fact that traditional retailers who've stayed away from technology today are beginning to start embracing technology, the fact that a lot of technologies today have come, which has made the transition from being an offline retailer to being an offline and an online retailer. There are lots of technologies which today are plug-and-play technologies. So all of those things have helped retailers to become a lot smarter, savvier than what they used to be in the past. And that has actually evoked the interest of private capital. So today when you look at private capital has invested in, private capital is also exiting from several retail ventures, and the kind of returns that private capital has actually got in their entry and exit from several retail ventures has been tremendous. So if you look at some of the early investors in Nykaa, they've got more than 50 times in terms of return. And similarly, if you look at any company which is there today, all of them have got a large uptick in terms of the returns that they have generated on the investments that they made. So there is a much greater interest of private capital in retail. Of course, it is not in the offline retail space. Everybody is looking for how do you convert from being just merely offline to being offline and online. I don't want to use the word omni-channel, but being offline and online. And if that business has got the potential to do so, there is today a lot of private capital which is available for investment. The second thing that we are seeing is that with the world awash in money, there is a lot more money available. So what you are beginning to see is that the returns, the availability of finance for investment in businesses is actually increased quite a lot. So there is a lot of what you might define as gunpowder sitting with all the private equity players just waiting to get invested. The other thing that we are seeing is also the reward of the public financial markets. And what we are seeing today is public financial markets are rewarding the risk takers. If they think that you are technology enabled, if they think that you're a business which will sustain in the future, if they think that you're a business which, even it might be a small business, but if you're a business which actually embraces both and is able to grow, then public markets are willing to invest in. So if you look at the likes of a Nykaa or a Zomato, which is losing money, Nykaa, which made some marginal profit last year, or Paytm, which is losing money. Paytm is supposed to list today, so we'll get to understand what the public market uptick is. But certainly when you look at all of these, and if you look at a lot of the technology companies, what we have seen is that public markets have handsomely rewarded any of these kinds of investments. So that's the other thing that we should look for, thinking of the fact that retail today is not just an offline business. Retail for us is an offline and an online business. It's a technology-driven business. It's a business which can actually attract private capital into it. And as and when you grow large enough and you want to go into the public markets, then you will see that the public markets also reward retail investments, which is what we have seen in the case of Nykaa. So despite the fact that it is in a very small category, which is beauty and personal care, extending now into fashion, but you've got a company which has today got a valuation which is more than Coal India's valuation, more than Bharat Petroleum's valuation, selling originally, if you look at it, beauty and cosmetic products. So what does it indicate? Are there so many, investors in the market who have not thought about it? Or have investors thought about it and are seeing things that we don't see? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves, that maybe there is something in that company which the public investors are seeing and willing to sustain. So there is a lot of opportunity for us to be able to raise money from public markets, provided the foundations of the business are good and provided we can show an upward trajectory. So is there any reason for us to now wait and think about how we should change? We are seeing that the customer has changed. We've seen that COVID has actually managed to provoke all of us into changing our own lives and our own behaviors and our own ways of working or studying or entertaining. We are seeing also that there is a lot of capital which is available. We are also seeing that there's a lot of technology which is actually available. So if you really combine all of these things, taking into account the changing customer, taking into account the fact that technology today is available to help us change, taking into account the fact that there is private capital available to help us, grow our businesses, and there are public markets which are willing to reward us for our businesses, then we are actually all sitting in the right spot. We are sitting in that location where we actually are being able to experience. So when I played that earlier slide of mine saying new life 2022 onwards is not just about sustaining or succeeding. It's about the fact that today we have an opportunity to be able to reinvent ourselves. And if we can reinvent ourselves and change like the way the customer is changing, then we have a great opportunity to be able to create much greater value in our business than what we have done in the past. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that hearing.